Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the 10th episode in which, rather than Hinata's father, young Uzumaki Naruto foils Kumo's kidnapping attempt. However, he receives a severe wound in the process, jeopardizing his shinobi career. That is, if not for a certain fox stepping in and offering Naruto the Hokage to be a reward for his heroism. Witness Naruto's newfound power and unique perspective. This story comes from Storyseeker 7. Make certain to support him, her. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. Konoha, abandoned warehouse, storage room. Yakumo felt a brief moment of confusion as she woke up. She looked around, realizing that she was not in her bed. Indeed, not even her room. She appeared to be in a storage room of some sort. There were others in the storage room with her. 4 boys that were waking up, and a man lying unconscious on the floor. For a moment, she could have sworn one of the boys was Sasuke. She sat up, trying to shake off the hazy around her mind. "Where am I?" she asked. What happened? That was about when the memories came back to her. Their time in the forest clearing. The attack and kidnapping. Even her friends coming to her rescue. She remembered all of it. How she revealed her clan's secret and the shadow taking over her powers. How they were plunged into a nightmare world. "You're supposed to be afraid of me. You're the weak one here, not me. Not anymore." And she remembers her confrontation with the shadow and how Sasuke and the others helped her. "No matter how far away you push me. No matter how deep in your mind you bury me. I will always be there, waiting for my moment. The moment you falter and show weakness, I will strike. And will be there to stop you." Yakumo smiled even as the tears started to come down her cheeks. She was free. And it was thanks to Sasuke and his friends. Sasuke took notice of Yakumo's state, causing a worried frown to spread across his face. "Yakumo, are you okay?" He didn't get to finish his sentence as the young Kurama girl threw herself at Sasuke. "Yakumo, what are you?" He tried to get out. But was drowned out by the sound of Yakumo's voice. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you," she kept saying. "The shadow, it's gone. I can't feel its presence anymore. Thank you." "It's all right, Yakumo," she heard Sasuke say. Unknown to her, his face now resembled his favorite vegetable. "You don't have to thank me. You were the one that faced her, not me." Yakumo pulled away from her hug and looked at Sasuke. "But if it weren't for you and the others, would have never been able to face the shadow," she said. "It's because of you that I don't have to live in fear anymore." "I was only helping," Sasuke said. "You were the one that beat the shadow, not us." "He's right, Yakumo," Naruto said. Yakumo looked around, seeing that the other boys had gathered around her, smiling at her. "You were amazing," he continued. The others were giving their nods of agreement. She felt something snuggling up on her lap. She looked down to see that Akamaru had crawled into her lap. Yakumo smiled and started to pet the little dog, who gave a happy bark. "Thank you, everyone," she said. She owed them so much, that she didn't know how to begin to repay them. Sasuke, it seems, was a mind reader. "Don't even think about wanting to repay us," he said. "That was all you back there, so you don't feel like you have to owe us anything." "Right, you're my friends," Yakumo said. She felt a tingling sensation in her mouth at saying that. She had heard that phrase so many times from Sasuke and the others. But now that she was saying it, somehow, it felt more real. "Still, thank you," she smiled at her friends. "You gave me the courage I needed to face the shadow. For that, you will always have my gratitude." For a moment, silence fell over the room. But Yakumo was content to enjoy it. Of course, the moment didn't last long. "Oh, Naruto," Kiba said, looking at Naruto. "I have a question for you." "What?" Naruto said nervously. The attention of the others was now on Naruto. "Who was that man with you?" Kiba asked. "The guy with the orange hair and a kimono that looked like fire. What was he doing in that nightmare world?" And Kiba began to look around the room, prompting the others to do the same. "Where did he go?" "I was wondering about that myself," Shikamaru said. "And don't tell us he was some figment of your imagination. He felt too real to be anything but an actual person." Yakumo was wondering that herself. The only other person that had been caught in the genjutsu was lying unconscious on the floor. Everyone was looking at Naruto expectantly. The blindfolded boy was scratching the back of his head. "I was hoping you guys would have forgotten about him," he said. He had a look on his face. An expression that Yakumo was familiar with. "I guess I do owe guys an explanation." "So, who was he?" Sasuke said. Naruto was biting the bottom of his lips. Whatever it was something that he wasn't comfortable sharing. "Well, you see it's..." Yakumo cut him off. "It's alright," she said. "You don't have to tell us if you're not ready." The other boys gave her questioning expressions before looking back at Naruto and seeing how uncomfortable he was. "It's alright, Naruto," Sasuke said. "You don't have to tell us right now if you don't want to. We were curious about that guy." Naruto nodded and shot Yakumo an appreciative expression. "Thanks," he said softly. Then seemingly, he made a decision. "But I think I will tell you. But not right now, not here. I want everyone here when I tell you." That seemed to satisfy the others. "Okay, so what do we do now?" Kiba asked. "What do you mean?" Naruto asked. "I mean, what do we do to get out of here?" The Inuzuka boy gestured to the room around them. "Right, still kidnapped." The faint sounds of fighting could still be heard through the walls. How much time had passed in the real world? Minutes, hours? For all Yakumo knew, only seconds might have passed. "Nothing, really," Shikamaru said, yawning. "Konoha's already sent a team to rescue us. So, all we have to do is wait." "You sure?" Kiba asked. "You think they might be able to beat those guys?" "Sure, they can," Sasuke said, almost sounding insulted. "My brother's leading the rescue. There's no way a bunch of criminals can beat him." "He's right, Itachi is really strong," Naruto said. "I think he might even be as strong as the Hokage. Though I think the old man would still beat him in a fight." "Of course, you would say that," Sasuke said with a smirk. Yakumo started to giggle. Life was starting to look brighter for her. Itachi removed his blade from his opponent's chest. The man fell to the floor on his back, a look of shock quickly spreading across his face. The battle had reached its climax. Of the 6 missing nin they encountered, only 2 had been rendered unconscious, 1 was unaccounted for, the rest killed in battle. Now even their leader had fallen before a Konoha blade. Itachi's blade. Konoha, in comparison, had no losses, though most of them were tired and had some injuries. Nothing that couldn't be fixed by a couple of days of rest. Itachi looked down at his opponent, somewhat surprised to see a smile spreading across his face. "So, this is how I die." "Huh," he said. Itachi knelt down. "Save your strength," he said. "Don't give me that crap," the man responded. "We both know I'm going to die here," the man began to chuckle. "At the very least, I was killed at the hands of a worthy opponent," he coughs up a thick blob of blood. "It's just too bad it had to be a Konohanin that did me in." Itachi frowned. "Tell me, why did you do this?" he asked. "Who hired you to capture Yakumo Kurama, and what do they want with her?" The man's smile grew even as the life left his eyes. "Sorry. But you're not getting his head went to the side. Itachi checked for a pulse. "Nothing." He closed the man's eyes, giving him his final rest. It looked like they would have to interrogate the survivors if they wanted to learn anything. You two, he said, pointing to a pair of Jonan. Secure the prisoners. They nodded and went to their task. Izumi, you're with me. The rest of you secure the perimeter. Sir, the shinobi want to work. Itachi didn't waste any time as he swiftly moved through the warehouse, Izumi close behind. There was still one missing nin unaccounted, and there was no telling where he went. It was possible he fled from the battle once it became clear that defeat was inevitable. In which case, he might have already been intercepted and captured or killed. The other possibility causes him to pick up his pace. In a matter of seconds, Itachi was across the warehouse and bursting through a door. Entering into the storage room where his brother and his friends were being held, he expected to see a lot of things. He expected to see the children safe and mostly unharmed. He expected to see them all dead. He even expected to see the final missing nin standing over them, using the children as a bargaining chip to secure his escape. This was not expected, though it did bring him some relief. The children were safe and huddled together, happily talking to each other. The unaccounted for missing nin was indeed in the room, lying on the floor unconscious. Itachi had enough time to raise an eyebrow before the children noticed his presence. Itachi-san. Sasuke happily said. The others quickly welcomed him with nods or an enthusiastic hand wave, in Naruto's case. Izumi walked up behind him and gasped. They're okay, she said. Itachi nodded and took one last glance at the man on the floor to confirm he was unconscious. Before he dashed across the room and enveloped his little brother in a tight hug. Itachi, his brother Sasuke shouted, surprised by the sudden gesture. He struggled against his brother's grip but couldn't move an inch. After a moment, Itachi released his brother and held onto his shoulders. Sasuke, are you all right? He asked, looking over at his little brother. Did they hurt you? Did they do anything at all to you? This was the second time in his life that his precious little brother had been in danger, and he was powerless to stop it. I'm okay, Itachi, Sasuke said quickly. Really, I am. All of us are. Itachi looked at the other children in the room, seeing that everyone was okay. Itachi let out a breath of relief. Before pulling Sasuke into another tight hug. Sasuke, you had me so worried. For a moment, I was afraid we were going to lose you, he said, almost feeling his voice shake. Itachi? Sasuke said. He felt Izumi's presence behind him. Try not to worry about him, Sasuke-kun, she said. He was just worried for his little brother. You had us all scared with the little stunt you pulled. Her voice came off as scolding, but Itachi could hear the softness under it. I'm sorry, Sasuke said, stammering over his words. But I couldn't. I had to. Itachi released his brother from the hug and once again held him by his shoulders. He looked the boy in his eyes. Sasuke, Itachi said in an even voice. What you did was reckless and foolish. You could have gotten yourself and the others killed. Or worse, he didn't even want to think about what plans their captors had for them. You shouldn't have gone after them like that. Sasuke frowned at him. But I couldn't just let them get away, he defended himself. I couldn't let them take Yakumo. She's my friend, so I had to save her. Itachi smiled at his brother. He truly was proud of the boy, the young man before him. Which is why I am so proud of you, he said. There is an old saying in Konoha. Those who abandon the mission are scum. But those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. Today you choose to protect your comrades, and for that, I am proud of you, Sasuke. He let go of his brother's shoulders and put his hand on his head. You will make for a fine shinobi one day. His brother's cheeks turned red. Thanks, Itachi. Nodding, Itachi turned his head to face the Kurama girl. He couldn't help but notice she was holding Sasuke's hand. Are you all right, Miss Kurama?" he asked the girl. The girl nodded. "I am. Thanks to your Sasuke-kun," she said, looking at his brother. Itachi raised an eyebrow at the honorific. Maybe it was time that his little brother got the talk. "I see," he said. "That's good to hear. Is there something else that might be bothering you?" He was subtly referring to the Ito. He was surprised when the girl smiled at him. "You don't have to hide it," she said. "They know about the Ito. And you don't have to worry about either." Today seemed to be a day for surprises. He wondered how her uncle would react when he learned that she told the Kurama clan's secret. "How so?" he asked. "Because I have it under control now," she said, looking at Sasuke and the others in the room. "They helped me." Itachi looked to his brother for confirmation. Sasuke nodded and mouthed. "Tell you later." Itachi sighed. It seemed he would have a lot of questions for his little brother. But that would come later. Looking over the children, he saw how tired they all were. This had been a long day for everyone. "You'll have to tell me about it later," he said. "But that can wait. I think it's time that we got you home. All of you," he added, looking at each of the kids. "I'm sure your families are worried sick about you." A groan asked from the Nara boy. "Troublesome, my mother is going to kill me," he muttered. Itachi smirked. He had heard the Nara matriarch had a temper. "Itachi, before we go," Naruto said. Itachi looked at the boy and was put on edge at seeing the serious expression on his face. "There's something you should know about the kidnappers." "What is it, Naruto-san?" Itachi said. If the children had managed to get some intel on the missing Nin, he would listen. They had help. Someone in Konoha helped the missing Nin get in. Itachi felt like a trail of ice was climbing his spine. A traitor? In Konoha? The Hokage had to know about this immediately. It was Itachi. Even for someone with his eyes, everything happened in a motion of blur. A shadow moved over him, crimson flew into the air, followed by screaming. But the red he would always remember. He would always note how strange it looked as it floated in the air. The moment passed, and everything came back into focus. The next thing he knew, the man whom he thought was unconscious was falling to the floor. His throat was cut open. Itachi stood there, trying to process the sequence of events. He felt his hand trembling. He looked down but not at the dead man before his feet, but at Izumi, as the blood flooded out of her body. Clang! The sound of his sword hitting the ground sounded as Itachi dropped down and cradled his girlfriend in his arms. "Izumi," he said as he examined her wound. A large gash had been cut across her chest. Even though his mind knew the truth, he tried to deny it. This had to be some trick. A genjutsu he fell prey to. Or perhaps a nightmare that he would soon wake up from. A rapidly cooling hand touched him on the cheek. Izumi was smiling at him. It was both beautiful and horrifying as the red came out from her mouth. "I'm sorry, Itachi," she said. "My body just reacted." He felt Izumi's hand slipping from his face. Itachi grabbed it and kept on his cheek. "Izumi, please hang in there, this couldn't be happening." He had to be dreaming. "Medic. Medic," he choked out between sobs. He mildly noted one of the children running out of the room. He thinks it might have been the Inuzuka boy. Izumi continued to speak. "You were a good man," she said. Her free hand shakily went to where her stomach was. "And you would have been a good FA." She stopped speaking after that. He felt the hand on his cheek go limp. "Izumi?" he said. What was she going to say? A good what? AFA? He looked at where she placed her hand, wondering why she would use the last of her strength for that. Then, it clicked in his mind. Choked sobs escaped from his mouth as the full loss hit him. This was his fault. He had killed Izumi. If he paid a bit more attention. If he had just taken care to make sure the attacker was unconscious. Or even tied him up. Then Izumi would still. He would still have. He had killed Izumi just as assuredly if he had done it with his own hands. He felt his vision blur and shift. An intense pain shooting through his head. Itachi? What's happening with your eyes? Konoha streets. As he got home, Mizuki smiled. Not the fake smile he had been forced to wear all these years in this wretched village. A true genuine smile. Today had been a good day. Even if others would disagree with him. He had to admit, at first, he had been nervous working with a group of missing nin. Getting them into the village and showing them the best place to hide out had twisted at his heart. He supposed it was the tiny little portion of loyalty he had left for Konoha talking. It wasn't there anymore. Seeing a part of his home engulfed in a fireball had set his concerns at ease. He made the right decision in turning against Konoha. This village doesn't deserve my loyalty, he had thought. And why should he give his loyalty to Konoha? Why should he devote his life to a village that never appreciated his skills? He had worked so hard and sacrificed so much for Konoha that he deserved some recognition, didn't he? But what did he get for his efforts? A miserable teaching position in an academy full of snot-nosed brats who thought they could become shinobi. Mizuki gritted his teeth. This village doesn't give a damn about people like me, he said under his breath. Konoha only cared about the people that came from a clan or a prominent shinobi family. They catered to their every whim and even let them get away with anything. Like the Uchiha when they tried to betray the village, the whole clan should have been punished and made an example of. But just because a few of them remained loyal, the clan got off scot-free. Or the Hyuga, who practically enslaved 2/3 of their clan. Kami knew what the other clans were getting away with. Konoha didn't give a damn who you were if you didn't come from a clan or had some connection to someone who did. Hell, they even let a demon attend the academy. His mind flashed back to that thing in human form. It sickened him to his very core that it was allowed to roam free and treated like a human. The Sandame must have truly gone senile. He should have put that thing down the moment the Yondame turned it into a child. This village was full of people more concerned with your bloodline or fools too soft-hearted to do what was needed. Turning against the village was the best decision he had ever made in his life. Whoever his benefactor was, they clearly knew talent when they saw it. They had promised him everything had ever wanted and more. For that, they would have his loyalty and devotion. At least until he decided they were no longer useful to him. A crazed smile spread across his face. If no one's going to look out for me, why should I look out for them? He entered into his home. Almost immediately, his instincts went on full alert. Years of training kicked in as he sensed an intruder in his home. Who would dare to enter my house, he thought, pulling out a kunai. Come out, whoever you are, he shouted. His eyes dart side to side, scanning the area for any sign of the intruder. If you insist, a voice said flatly. An instant later, Mizuki was on the floor and his weapon thrown out of his hand. What? He thought. He tried to get up, but something or someone was holding him down. He turned his head over and gasped when he saw a pair of Anbu holding him down. What is the meaning of this? He said to them. Why are you in my home? Why are you attacking me like this? You have no rig. He stopped when he heard footsteps. He looked over at the source and felt his blood turn ice cold. Fear unlike anything Mizuki felt gripped at his heart, and he ceased his struggling. Hello, traitor, the scarred man said with a sadistic smile. Ayayabiki? Mizuki said. The man knelt down. I think we need to have a little chat. How could everything turn so bad? Kurama clan compound, once again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, Yakumo's uncle said, bowing deeply to Sasuke. The young Uchiha rubbed the back of his head, feeling a bit embarrassed by all the praise he was receiving today. If it wasn't for you, I might have never seen my niece again. I only did what I thought was right, Sasuke said, trying his best to repress the blush he was feeling. Ever since the rescue, all he had heard was how brave he had been. How noble he was to save the heiress of the Kurama clan. You must have been brave to face the missing Nin alone. Truly, you are an honorable man to save that girl. You really are Itachi's little brother. Your father must be proud. Praises he felt like he didn't deserve. Did they also forget that he wasn't the only one that tried to save her? Sasuke looked over at Yakumo. She's my friend, and I care about her, the girl blushed. Looking back at the uncle, he saw that the man was smiling. Nonetheless, I appreciate that you tried to save my niece. For that, you will always have my gratitude. What's more, you helped Yakumo solve a problem that the whole clan has tried and failed to help her with. The defeat of her Ito. Sasuke's smile falters for a second. He didn't want to be reminded about that thing and so soon after. It was nothing, he said. It was Yakumo who beat it. Me and the others just gave her the push she needed. The man nodded. Perhaps, but clan and I have been pushing her as well. And yet we failed where you succeed, he said. Perhaps we were not pushing in the right way. All this time, we have treated her like she was a threat, not just to herself but to everyone around her. We kept her at arm's length. The man had a solemn look on his face. But you and your friends welcomed her with open arms. She's a good girl, Sasuke said, not really saying what he wanted. How could we not be friends with her? The man smiled at Sasuke. Though it didn't seem to be happy at all. At first, he began. I disapproved of your relationship. Or any relationship at all. I had believed that letting her near others was too great of a risk. To herself and the others around her. So, I and the rest of the clan chose to isolate her from the rest of the village, believing we were doing the right thing. That we were protecting the village. That we were sacrificing ourselves for its well-being. The man paused as he considered his words. But the truth was we were protecting ourselves. If Yakumo lost control while she was out in the village. If the secret of our clan got out, Yakumo's uncle shook his head. We could not live with the shame. So driven both by fear and pride, we hid away Yakumo from the world. But little did we know that we were only giving her Ito, the shadow as she likes to call it, an opening it could use to exploit her. It fed upon her feelings of isolation and grew stronger from it. Sasuke frowned. So, what you did was for nothing, he said, keeping the bitterness out of his voice. So, it would seem, Yakumo's uncle said. We should have seen it. We were only giving the shadow another means of attacking Yakumo's mind. We were too blinded by our fear and pride. A sad smile formed on his lips. Your brother is a most wise man, he said. Cut off by the sudden change in subject, Sasuke asked the question. My brother? You mean Itachi? What does he have to do with this? Some time ago, I followed Yakumo to your forest clearing. That was when I learned about you and Yakumo's relationship. I, of course, tried to put an end to it right away, the man said. Sasuke was not surprised by that. So, what happened? He tried to look back through his memories, seeing if he could recall a moment when he saw the man in the clearing. Your brother stopped me, Yakumo's uncle answered. And convinced me to let your friendship continue. Sasuke's eyes widened. Itachi never told him anything like that. He spoke of the will of fire. You do know about that, don't you? Sasuke nodded. A little. It's everyone's desire to protect one another. To protect their homes, families, and friends. He knew that Naruto spoke a lot about it, and they covered it briefly in the academy. Truth be told, Sasuke never really understood much about it. How could a simple desire empower someone so much? Looking at Yakumo now, he started to understand it a little. Yakumo's uncle nodded. Indeed, he said. I'm ashamed to admit this, but I had forgotten about it and its meaning. He said that Yakumo didn't need to be isolated from the village, that the will of fire was what she needed to defeat the shadow. The man fell silent, seemingly to reflect. He was right in the end. Having friends, having people to care for. That gave her the strength she needed to face the shadow. Sasuke could have told him that. My brother is considered a prodigy, Sasuke pointed out. Yakumo's uncle shook his head. Being a prodigy and wise are two separate things, he said. Your brother sees things that others cannot. He saw what Yakumo needed the most and told me as such. But being the fool I was, I tried to deny it. But looking at you two now, he said, looking between Sasuke and Yakumo. I can see that he was right all along. The next time you see him, tell him that. And tell him he has the thanks of the Kurama clan and my thanks as well. Sasuke nodded. I will. The man nodded, then smiled. Well, I believe that I have held you up long enough. This had been a long day for all of us. I'm certain that you want to get some rest. Sasuke wasn't about to argue. Half of the time, he had been afraid he would fall asleep. Sasuke stood up and bowed to the man. I thank you for the hospitality, he said. Yakumo's uncle nodded. The honor was mine, he said. You are welcome here at any time. And welcome to see my niece at any time. Sasuke hid his blush. Thanks, he said. Then, he looked over at Yakumo. I'll see you tomorrow? Yakumo nodded. In the clearing. In the clearing, Sasuke parroted. He left the Kurama compound. The sun was setting, signaling the end of the day. He was surprised to see Itachi waiting for him. Itachi? Sasuke said. I thought you were at the hospital. Itachi smiled at him, though it seemed a bit empty. I was just discharged, he said. I thought to come and get you before going home. The two brothers walked down the street leading away from the Kurama compound. An uncomfortable silence fell over the two. I'm sorry about Izumi, Sasuke said after a moment. Itachi remained silent for a moment longer before he spoke. There's no need to apologize. There was nothing you could have done to stop it. But Itachi, Sasuke began. If me and the others had been a bit more careful. If we hadn't been caught, then maybe. Sasuke's plea was cut when his older brother abruptly stopped and turned around to face him. He knelt down and placed his hands on his shoulders. Sasuke, he said. There was nothing you could have done to prevent what happened. You shouldn't blame yourself for things that are out of your control. That kind of thinking will only lead you to a dark place, Itachi smiled at him. And that is not a place I want you anywhere near. But Itachi, Sasuke tried to protest. If anyone was to blame, it's me, Itachi said. I should have been more attentive, I should not have relaxed my guard the way I did. As he spoke, his voice grew heavier. But I know what has happened cannot be undone. But doesn't it hurt? Sasuke said. Knowing that she's gone. Itachi nodded. It does, and I don't think it will ever stop hurting. But there is nothing I can do about it. The only thing that I can do is move forward. I know Izumi would never want me to dwell on the past. So please stop worrying about it. But Sasuke said, then stopped himself. Some part of him understood what Itachi was trying to say. But he couldn't help but feel guilty. If I was just a little bit less reckless. I understand, Sasuke said after a moment. Itachi continued to smile at him. One day, you will, he said, letting go of Sasuke, and stood up. Now then, tell me, how did your meeting go with the Kurama clan head? You mean Yakumo's uncle? Sasuke asked. Yes, Itachi confirmed. How did it go? Good, I guess, Sasuke said. He thanked me for helping to save his niece. He said that if it wasn't for me, he might have never seen her again. You deserve it, Itachi commented. The two started to walk again. Sasuke wasn't so sure about that. He also asked me to tell you something. Itachi looked at him expectantly. He said to thank you and that you are a wise man. Itachi's smile faltered for a second before he regained his composure. I see. Sasuke nodded. I think I understand what he meant by that. The sun had set by the time the two brothers got home. Kurama clan compound, Yakumo's room. Yakumo crawled into bed. She was so tired that she almost fell asleep right away. But she forced herself to stay awake. Her uncle Unkai pulled the covers over her body. You've had a long day, niece, he said. Understatement of a lifetime. In a span of 24 hours, she had been kidnapped, rescued, recaptured, pulled into a nightmare world by the shadow, dealt with the shadow, and rescued again. So much had happened that Yakumo was still having trouble processing it. She needed the rest, so her mind could finally comprehend it all. But one thing did stick in her mind was this. I'm free. She didn't know what to make of it. What that entailed for her. For as long as she could remember, the shadow had haunted her dreams. Whispered in the back of her mind. Now it was gone. Her uncle seemed to notice her thoughts. I'm sure you're looking forward to a good night's sleep, he said with a soft smile. Yakumo didn't give much of an answer, only a nod. It would be interesting to have a night where she didn't wake up screaming. Her uncle looked at her for a moment longer, his smile slipped away. I am sorry, Yakumo, he said. I have been a terrible uncle to you for these past few years. All this time I thought I was doing what was best for you. I isolated you from the village and kept you at arm's length. But all this time, all I was doing was hurting you. Yakumo sat up in her bed. Uncle Unkai, I know you were trying your best, she said to the man. You were trying to keep me safe. And you were trying to keep others safe as well. Unkai shook his head. No, I wasn't. What I told your friend was true. I wasn't doing it to keep you safe. I did it because I was afraid of what you would become. I did it because I was scared of what would happen to the clan if word got about you. Uncle, Yakumo said. Unkai looked at the ceiling. Your father must be rolling around in his grave, he said bitterly. I promised him I would take care of you should anything happen to him and your mother. I told him I would raise you like my own daughter. Yakumo, he lowered his body to the floor, placing his hands on the ground and bringing his face to the floor. Yakumo looked down at her uncle in shock. Please forgive me. I have failed as the head of the Kurama clan. I have failed as a brother to your father. But most of all, I have failed as an uncle to you. I kept you from the life that you deserved all because of my fear and pride. Yakumo, my niece, I beg for your forgiveness. Yakumo was shocked beyond words. Her uncle was asking for her forgiveness. No begging for it. He had lowered himself to beg for her forgiveness. Yakumo opened her mouth to speak. Then closed it as nothing came out. She didn't know what to say. But her uncle was on the floor waiting for a response. Even though a small part of her wanted him to stay like that. She knew she couldn't bring herself to watch anymore. Uncle Unkai, she said. Please raise. Her uncle raised his head to look up at her. Yakumo? Yakumo smiled at the man. Please, uncle, raise. I forgive you, she never raised how hard it would to be to 3 simple words. But Yakumo, he tried to say. Yakumo would not hear any of it. Uncle, you don't have to punish yourself like this, she said. So, please raise. I forgive you, her uncle looked shocked, but he nodded his head and rose back to his feet. I know what you did wasn't with the purest of intentions. But you did try to help me. Even as you tried to isolate me from the rest of the world, you did your best to ensure I did not feel lonely. You let Kurenai become my sensei. You tried to convince me to display my paintings in public. And you let me keep my friends after learning about them. Yakumo had a wistful smile on as she spoke. You have done everything you could to help me, and for that, I am thankful. So please stop punishing yourself. Yakumo, her uncle began. Then he stopped and smiled at that girl. You are more forgiving than I deserve, he said with a small bow. Truly, one day, you will become an amazing woman, then a knowing smile spread across his face. Something I imagine your Uchiha friend will appreciate. Yakumo blushed as she realized what her uncle was implying. Thank you, uncle. Very well then, Uncle Unkai said. I accept your forgiveness. But I do ask that we start over as uncle and niece. Let us leave the past where it belongs. On that, Yakumo could agree. All right, then, uncle, she said. Unkai nodded. Now then, get some rest, Yakumo. Today has been a long day, he said as he pulled the covers back over Yakumo as she laid back in bed. And you have an important appointment tomorrow. Yakumo frowned slightly. What appointment? Uncle Unkai smiled down at her. Why with your friend Sasuke, he said. Didn't you agree to meet with him tomorrow? Wouldn't want you to keep him waiting now, would we? Yakumo smiled and nodded. Will you be getting some rest too? She asked him. Soon, her uncle answered. I have some important matters to address first. Then I will get some rest. He switches the light off, leaving Yakumo's room in darkness. Good night, Uncle Unkai, Yakumo said. Good night, Yakumo, her uncle answered back. And have a pleasant night's sleep. She heard the door slide shut. Yakumo was still smiling as her eyes slowly shut and darkness overtook her consciousness. That night no shadows haunted her dreams, and no flames licked at her heels. She dreamt of better things. She dreamt of her friends. She dreamt of Sasuke. She had dreams of a better life. It was the best night of sleep she had had in her life. Hokage Tower. The moon was high in the sky when the last guest arrived in Hiruzen's office. He turned over in his chair, seeing Kurama Unkai walking in and shutting the door behind him. Ah, Unkai-sama, it's good to see that you have arrived, he greeted the Kurama clan head. A little bit late, aren't we? Ibiki commented in a dry tone. I apologize, Hokage-sama, for my lateness, Unkai said. But I was taking my niece to bed. And there were some things I had to discuss with her. Hiruzen nodded. A small weary smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. No need to apologize, my old friend, he said, waving the man off. Family should always come first. Wouldn't you agree, Fugaku-sama? The Uchiha clan head nodded. Completely Sandem-sama, he said. Speaking of, Hiruzen said, turning his attention back to Unkai. How is young Yakumo-san doing? She had a long day today. The old man was thankful that the day was finally ending. Though he knew it would leave its scars. She is understandably shaken, Hokage-sama, Unkai said. But she is holding up remarkably well. We have her friends to thank for that. Hiruzen smiled at the man's statement. The next generation of Konoha looked like it was shaping up to be the match the previous. They may even surpass them. But that time is still a little way off, he thought to himself. That is good to hear, Hiruzen said. Now then, I think that is enough of the pleasantries. Let us discuss what has happened today. The others in the room nodded. For this meeting, he called in his Jonan commander Narashikaku, the ANBU commander, and his head interrogator Marino Ibiki. In addition, he had requested the presence of the Kurama Unkai and Uchiha Fugaku for their special insights. Ibiki stood forward. Hokage-sama, as per your request, we have conducted a thorough interrogation of the prisoners. he said in a calm voice. But Hiruzen could hear the spark of sadism in it. "Report," Hiruzen commanded. "What have you learned from these men?" He hesitated to use that term. Ibiki nodded. "The subjects broke quite quickly under our interrogation. I would dare say it was some of our finest work to date," he said with a smile that would put hardened veterans on edge. "I can confirm that the attackers were indeed missing nin hailing from Iwa. They were led by the now deceased Ohara Daichi." "I see," Hiruzen said. "What can you tell us about their mission?" Ibiki nodded. "Yes, the attack on the village was a diversion. Their true object was the kidnapping of the one Kurama Yakumo. They were aided by the traitor Mizuki in their infiltration of the village. He even supplied them with the location of their hideout." "Speaking of," Hiruzen interrupted. "What is the status of Mizuki?" The ANBU commander stepped up. "Currently in our custody, Hokage-sama," he said. "He is being held in ANBU headquarters as we speak. With your permission, we can transfer him to T for interrogation. I have also taken the liberty of having his house searched." "Permission granted," Hiruzen said evenly. "Ibiki, I want you and Enko to handle his interrogation. I want to know what else he has revealed to our enemy and why he chose to betray our village." "Understood?" Ibiki nodded. "Yes, Hokage-sama. I look forward to having a little chat with him. May I continue with my report?" Hiruzen motioned for him to continue. "The missing nin do not do this on a whim, Sandame-sama. Someone hired them to kidnap the girl and bring her to a drop-off point. Do we know where this drop-off point is?" Hiruzen asked. "If they were lucky, they could catch the man or woman responsible for today's events." Ibiki shook his head. "Unfortunately, no. The knowledge likely died with their leader." Disappointed but not surprised, Hiruzen asked another question. "Do we at least know who this client is? What did the prisoners have to say about them?" Again, Ibiki shook his head. "Unfortunately, they knew very little about who their client was," he said. "Except for this one interesting thing. Their client was a shinobi." An unsettling silence fell over the room. "Any indication if this shinobi is affiliated with one of the hidden villages?" Sarutobi asked. "Nothing," Ibiki stated. "Either they never found out, or their leader never told them. So, in the end, we have more questions than answers," Shikaku said. "We don't know who hired these missing nin or why they wanted the Kurama girl in the first place." The ANBU commander looked at Shikaku questioningly. "I thought we established that they wanted to create a new clan of Kurama," he said. Hiruzen noticed the tight frown Unkai quickly hid. "That was only speculation," Shikaku said. "It is the most likely motive, but we cannot be certain until we can capture and ask the client themselves." Hiruzen nodded. He agreed with his Jonan commander, and it told him that the man was having similar thoughts to him. Despite all the evidence that Kurama Yakumo was the target of the missing nin's mission, Hiruzen could not shake the feeling that something more was going on. "Is there anything else that you would like to report?" Sarutobi asked. "Not at this time, Hokage-sama," Ibiki said. "Once we have conducted our interrogation on the traitor, I may have more to report to you. Moving on, then." He looked over at Kurama Unkai. "Now, I have read over the after-action reports of the rescue at the warehouse. According to the children, one of the missing nin attempted to kill them." Unkai nodded. "Yes, and my niece attempted to save them by using one of her genjutsu on the man. Fugaku, if you would?" Hiruzen said. Fugaku nodded. "I understand." He stepped out of the Hiruzen's office. When the door shut, Hiruzen activated the room's silencing seals. At which point, he continued from where he left, she lost control. Her Ito managed to take control and drag everyone in the room into a nightmare world. "Is this true?" The Kurama clan head nodded his head. I talked it over with my niece, Hokage-sama. She has confirmed that everything is true. Everyone in that room was dragged into a nightmare world where they had to face their fears and doubts. Not at a pleasant experience, Hiruzen imagined. The boys had been sparse on the details of what they saw and experienced. Does the girl pose a possible threat? The ANBU commander said. He quickly received a heated glare from Unkai. No, she does not, he said dryly. The boys were able to break free from their nightmares and aid Yakumo as she faced the Ito, or the shadow as she calls it, Shikaku said. Though I do have to wonder how they did it. Hiruzen quickly shot the man a look that told him to drop it. However, it happened whether they had stronger wills than the shadow was prepared to deal with or something else. The important matter is that they were able to help Yakumo suppress the shadow. Unkai, can you confirm if this is true? Unkai nodded. It is true, Hokage-sama. Yakumo has defeated her shadow and gained full control over her abilities. Are you certain of this? The ANBU commander pressed. It could be a trick from the shadow. I do not believe so, Unkai said. I have talked with my niece, and I did not find any trace of the shadow. I will, of course, keep monitoring her in the coming weeks and months. But I believe the threat of the shadow has passed. That is good to hear, Hiruzen said, with a smile. Without the shadow holding her back, I am confident your niece will become a splendid kunoichi. On that, we can agree, Hokage-sama, Unkai said with a small smile. Hiruzen deactivated silencing seals. If that is all. Unkai, you are free to leave, he said, getting a nod from the man. As you leave, tell Fugaku he may come back in. There is something I need to discuss with him. Unkai nodded. Have a good night, Hokage-sama, he said with a bow and left the room. A few moments later, Fugaku walked back in. The door shut behind him, and Hiruzen reactivated the silencing seals. Now then, Fugaku, I will not waste time. There was a troubling detail that showed up in your son's report, to be more precise, Naruto's too. Can you shed some light on this? Fugaku gave a grim nod to Hiruzen. Yes, Hokage-sama. Though if I may ask a question. Hiruzen already knew what the question would be. I have already stricken it from the reports. Only the four of us in this room will know, though Hiruzen would not be surprised if Danzo came to him. And it will stay in this room. Fugaku nodded. Then I can confirm that my eldest son Itachi has awakened his Mangekyo Sharingan, then he added bitterly. Konoha now has a new powerful tool at its disposal. Hiruzen remained silent for a moment. He understood where the feeling of resentment was coming from. The Mangekyo was a powerful tool to have. But the price that had to be to receive. Hiruzen felt it was too high. I see, Hiruzen said. And how is your son? Mentally speaking. Fugaku was silent for a moment. He is holding up well. Considering the loss he suffered today. But I am his father, and I know he's hurting. So that now gives us 3 Mangekyo in the village, Shikaku said. You, your son, and Shursui. What will you do now? I'll talk with my son, Fugaku said. Find out what abilities he has gained and warn him of the drawbacks of the Mangekyo. Aside from that, I'll assure him that I'll be there for him. And so will the rest of the family. Hiruzen sighed. He was ready for this night to be over. Tell him he has my condolences, he got an appreciative nod from the man. If that is everything. We can go over the final details of today's events and then call it a night. It was days like that Hiruzen wished he never took the hat back. Unknown, master, a figure said, kneeling. In the darkness, a set of eyes opened. Report, his master said. Our plan was a success, the first figure said. He pulled out a scroll from his sleeves. The missing Nin did their job and provided me with the opening I needed, he tossed the scroll toward his master. A pale hand grabbed the scroll. Kukukuku. Well done, Kabuto, the second figure said with a snake-like smile. With this, our plans can move forward. Kabuto pushed his glasses up. Unfortunately, I could not copy everything from the scroll of seals. Konoha responded to the situation quicker than we had expected. Much quicker. A frown appeared on his master's lips, but it only lasted for a second before the smile returned. A shame, he said. But as long as you got the jutsu I wanted, it doesn't matter. All of its secrets will be mine once that decrypt village is burned to the ground. Ah, but I get ahead of myself. What has become of our friends? Were they able to complete the mission we gave them? Kabuto frowned. He was not sure how his master was going to take this. I'm afraid not, Lord Orochimaru, he said. As I said, Konoha was able to respond to the situation quicker than we had anticipated. Somehow, they got wind of their true objective and surprised them at the hideout we supplied. Kabuto remained silent, trying to find a way to ease his master's anger. I will, of course, look into the matter so it can't happen again. He looked at his master's face, looking for any sign of his displeasure, but to his surprise, he only saw a brief shadow of disappointment. Ah, that is a disappointment. I would have loved to learn how the Kurama's genjutsu work. I think it might be something in their brains. Kabuto allowed his surprise to leak through. You're not disappointed that we did not get the Kurama girl? The snake Sannin smiled at him. Kukukuku, Kabuto, he said. The girl was never the prize I sought. He held out the scroll. This was. The secrets in this scroll are of far more value than some little girl. Granted, it would have been a nice bonus to have her as well. But alas, if it is not to be, then it is not to be. Kabuto nodded, showing his understanding. Maybe you will get another chance. Orochimaru's smile grew. Yes, perhaps you are right. When Konoha is finally reduced to ashes, if there are any survivors from that clan, I will study them and learn the secrets of their minds. Yes, Orochimaru, Kabuto said. If that is all, the snake Sannin said. You may leave and continue with your missions. Kabuto bowed deeply and left the chamber. Alone now, the former Konohanin looked at the scroll. He was pleased with Kabuto's latest assignment. Granted, it was a risk. No doubt, the old fool tightened the defenses around his precious village. But that did not matter to him. There were other ways in. Other weaknesses he could exploit to destroy his former home. A snake always found its way in. Konoha, Uchiha compound. Sasuke woke up in his room and smiled. Today is the day that he and his friends have been waiting for 5 years. Today he would graduate from the academy and become a genin of Konoha. Well, I still have to pass the graduation test. Sasuke reminded himself, sitting up. 5 years of training. 5 years of study, poring over textbook after textbook. 5 years of enduring Iruka-sensei's lectures. Sasuke smirked. That feat alone should have made the whole class genin. Sasuke got out of his bed and prepared himself for the day. A few minutes later, he was clean and dressed. Walking into his home's dining room, his nose was assaulted by the smells of breakfast being made. Sasuke's stomach growled. Itachi must be cooking something good. Somebody sounds hungry. It wasn't Itachi's voice. Sasuke's eyes widened when he saw his smiling mother come out of the kitchen. A plate of food in her hand. Mom? You're home? When? How? He bombarded her with questions. I thought you were supposed to be on a mission. He remembered her saying it was a prank. His mother smiled at him. Of course, I'm home, she said. She laid the plate down on the table, about where Sasuke sat. She walked over to him and wrapped her arms around him. You thought I was going to miss my baby's special day? Sasuke blushed, glad that no one was around. Mom, he said. His mother laughed and let go of him. I got back in last night, she said. I managed to finish my mission earlier than expected. So here I am. Breakfast is ready. His mother looked at him and smiled. I made of your favorites, an omelette with tomatoes in it. Sasuke had to keep himself from licking his lips. Thanks, Mom, he said, taking his seat. He took a bit from his omelette and smiled. It's good. Anything for my baby, Mom said. And when you and your friends graduate, I'll make all of your favorite dishes. I'm going to need lots of tomatoes. Which is why your brother isn't here right now. If Sasuke wasn't motivated to pass now, he was now. So, how was your mission? He asked. Pretty well, actually, his mom answered. She took a seat next to him. I had to escort this merchant convoy back to their country. We had run with some bandits and a couple of missing nin. But nothing I couldn't manage. Sasuke nodded. That's good to hear. So, how have you been while I've been gone? His mom asked. Been keeping your grades up at the academy? Training hard? Hanging out with your friends? A sly smile slipped across her face. Or maybe you spent some time with Yakumo? Sasuke blushed and almost choked on his food. Mom! He said, exasperated. His mother chuckled. I kid, she said. But you should bring her over sometime, maybe tonight? It is a special night for both of you, after all. Yakumo had enrolled in the academy a year ago. She would be graduating with Sasuke and the rest of their friends. I'll think about it, Sasuke said with a blush. It really didn't sound like a bad idea. Sasuke finished his breakfast and was about to leave for the academy when his mother stopped him. Oh, Sasuke, one last thing. Your father does want to see you before you go. He should be in his study. Sasuke frowned. Do I have to? He asked. His mother looked at him. It's up to you, Sasuke, she said. But I think you should talk to him. Sasuke sighed. He got the message. I'll talk to him. Then he left the dining room. It didn't take him long to find his way to his father's study. He stood in front of the doors, debating if he should go in. His father would understand if he decided to go to the academy without talking to him first. Sasuke sighed. He knew. He couldn't avoid this forever. He knocked on the door. Come in, his father's voice answered. Sasuke slid the door open. Stepping in, he slid it shut behind him. His father was sitting at his desk. Stacks of paper flanked both sides of the desk, and his father had a pen in his hand. He was looking down at a sheet of paper in the middle of the desk. His father looked up. For a second, he saw a look of surprise flash across his eyes. Before he smiled. Sasuke, I'm glad you came. You wanted to talk to me? Sasuke said. His father nodded. Yes, wanted to talk to you about your graduation exam, he said. Sasuke winced and braced himself. Imagines of his father telling to not to discredit the Uchiha name and how he needed to be at the top of his class flashed into his mind. I wanted to wish you well, his father said. You have done well to get to this point. I am so proud of you. Sasuke was surprised by the praise. Then he reminded himself that his father was not the same man he was 5 years ago. Thank you, father, Sasuke said. His father smiled at him. I know you will go on to do great things, Sasuke, he said. Already, you have proven yourself to be capable, Shinobi. I have no doubt in my mind that you will pass this test and join the ranks of Konoha Shinobi. Sasuke swallowed hard. Thank you, father, he said with a bow. I won't disappoint you. His father's smile faltered. You don't have to seek my approval anymore, Sasuke, he said. I'm proud of you. I really am. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room as father and son tried to think of something to say. Sasuke turned around. I'll be going to the academy now, he said. His hand was on the door when he heard his father speak. Sasuke, I know it was hard on you, and I messed up as a father. But it has been 5 years, and I have tried. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? Sasuke remained still at the door, his hand on the frame. He opened the door and stepped out. Hyuga compound Naruto was bouncing with excitement. Today was the day he would graduate and take his first steps toward becoming Hokage. He could already picture himself in those robes now. He would have to make some changes to it, though. Add his own personal flair to it. Maybe a splash of orange would make it look nice. Would you hold still for a second? Sarah said sternly. You do want to look nice for today? Don't you? Naruto frowned slightly. Sarah had insisted that he dress nicely today. Currently, she was trying to do his hair. In her words, trying to get it under some form of control. Good luck with that, Nei-san. I guess, Naruto said. I still don't get why I have to do this. Today is the day you graduate from the academy, Sarah said, pulling the comb through his hair. You should always look nice on special days like this. Pretty soon, you're going to be a genin, and you need to look the part. Especially since you will be representing the Hyuga. I mean, I get wanting to look good on special days, not to say he didn't always look good. Who could resist his irresistible charm? I can give you a list. A certain fox said. That would be a very short list. Naruto said. It's longer than you think. Naruto ignored the giant demon fox in his gut. But for the academy graduation exam? Naruto questioned. Only one part of it is a written exam. The rest is going to get my clothes dirty. Sarah snorted. It's the principle of it, she said. She pulled hard on his hair. Kamisake, what is with your hair? Naruto winced in pain. I don't know. But could you stop? I feel like you're about to pull my head off. He winced again as Sarah gave another tug. Not until I get this damn thing under control, Sarah quipped. Good luck with that, Sarah-chan, Naruto said. I tried it before and broke like 5 combs before I decided to give up. Almost on cue. Crack. Snap. He heard Sarah growl. Naruto, your hair is almost as stubborn as you, she said. Naruto smiled. I prefer free-spirited. He saw Sarah raise the broken comb in the air, an annoyed expression on her face. Naruto braced himself for the incoming thump. Thankfully, his caretaker got control of herself and lowered the broken hair tool. Fine, I give up, she said, putting the comb on the drawer. At least the rest of you will look nice. For however long that will last, Naruto said. Sarah rolled her eyes. Then a small smile spread across her lips. Well, I'm sure Hinata will appreciate it. Any retort that Naruto might have had died in his throat. You think so? He asked. Through his eyes, he saw his cheeks redden. Sarah continued to smile down at him. I'm sure she won't be able to take her eyes off you. I guess I could try to look nicer, Naruto said. Naruto didn't know why, but in the last few years, he started noticing the strange feelings he got when he was around Hinata. His heart would race when he hung around her, and whenever she looked at him longer than a few seconds, he started to blush. Even when he wasn't around her, he frequently thought about Hinata. Like how nice she looked and how pretty her smile was. Her opinion also started to matter more to him of late. Not to say it didn't matter to him before then. He always listened to what his friend had to say, and her opinions always felt important to him. But of late, they felt even more important than before. Why do I feel like this? Naruto thought. Why were his feelings towards the girl changing now? And why did they make him feel so good? Deep in his mind, Kurama heard and felt his thoughts. The old Biju smiled, his container was growing up. I wish you were here, Kushina. To see your little boy falling in love. The boy had yet to figure out his feelings for the Hyuga girl. Or even realize the girl's feelings toward him. Kurama mentally signed. Truly the boy had inherited his mother's density. Come to think of it. Dense seems to be an Uzumaki trait. He remembered. That Mito had trouble realizing Hashirama's feelings toward her. Kurama laid his head on his paws. Well, at least the boy has enough of his father in him to break through some of those layers. Who knows, maybe the Hyuga girl won't have to wait as long as the others did. Back in reality, Naruto was playing around with his hair. Will she really notice? He asked his caretaker. He saw Sarah giving him a knowing smile. Of course, she will, she said. Now then, let's get you dressed. The Elder Council will want to see the both of you before leaving. Naruto frowned. Do we have to see those old prunes? Naruto didn't have a high opinion of the Hyuga elders. Most seemed like they had sticks stuck up their ass. There were maybe one or two who he could tolerate, but the rest he couldn't stand. You should show some more respect towards the elders, Sarah said with a disapproving scowl. Though it looked more forced than it should. But yes, you do have to see them. Any bets that they'll say something like, "Don't embarrass the clan, or you need to act more like how a shinobi should," Naruto said dryly. Sarah just remained silent. So, I guess you will want me on my best behavior? Consider it good practice for when you do become Hokage, Sarah said. A few minutes later, Naruto was dressed, and they had left his home. It was a nice day to be out. Through his many eyes, he saw the activities of the Hyuga compound and the village. Through one set of eyes, he saw a shopkeeper open his shop up. Through another set, he saw children playing in one of the parks. Several saw a genin team chasing Tora, the Hell Cat. Naruto smirked at that one. I see they managed to clean up your mess from yesterday, Sarah said, looking up. Naruto didn't need to look to know what she was talking about. He had seen the workers finishing cleaning up last night. Several pairs of eyes turned to gaze at the Hokage monument. Just as pristine and awe-inspiring as it has always been, and someday his face would be up there. Unfortunately, the fresh coat of paint he gave it yesterday was gone now. I think it looked better that way, Naruto commented. Sarah rolled her eyes. Honestly, I don't know what goes through that mind of yours. Nor do I have the desire to do so, she said. Naruto saw the faint smile tugging at her lips. They entered the main compound and were soon greeted by familiar faces. Sarasan. Naruto-san. Hayashi said with a welcoming smile. You have arrived just on time. Sarah bowed to the Hyuga clan head. I always endeavor to please you, Hayashi-sama, she said. Naruto ignored the exchange between the two. He was occupied with staring at Hinata and how she was dressed. Instead of the beige jacket and black pants she had taken to wearing, Hinata was dressed in a simple lavender kimono with a floral design. She looked prettier than usual. Naruto felt the heat building up in his cheeks. That jacket she wears really doesn't do her justice. He thought as his eyes fixated on one part of her body. A small cough in the back of his mind. Kit, her eyes are a little higher. Naruto shook his head, trying to shake the image out of his mind. Had he been staring at Hinata's? He noticed that the others were staring at him strangely. Naruto scratched the back of his head and chuckled. Hey, guys. How are you doing? He asked. Hinata gave him a concerned look. Naruto-kun, are you okay? She asked. Naruto nodded. Yay, I am, he mentally winced at the small stutter that slipped out. Fuzzbutt was just giving me some trouble. Careful now. Hinata and the others looked unconvinced, but Hinata smiled. All right, she said. But tell him not to distract you too much today. You need to focus today. Naruto nodded. I'll be sure to send him the message. The day after the kidnapping with Yakumo, Naruto had come clean about his status as a Jinchuriki. About how the Yondaime didn't actually defeat Kurama but rather sealed him away in a newborn child. He even explained to them the true events of that night. By the end of it, Naruto felt like a load had been lifted off his shoulders. Even still, he had braced himself for the inevitable harsh rejection from his friends. For them to call him a monster, for them to attack or run away from. Worst of all, for Hinata to look at him in fear. He was scared. None of that ever happened. Hinata had shocked him by pulling him into a hug so tight that he felt their hearts beating together. She accepted him. He didn't remember all the words she had said because she had been sobbing the whole time. But he did remember her accepting him for what he was. Funny, Naruto thought as the group walked down the halls. He was walking beside Hinata. I think that's about when my feelings towards her started to change. He noticed that at some point, his fingers had curled around Hinata's. They felt nice, cool, and smooth to the touch. Hinata, Naruto said. The girl looked at him. Yes, Naruto-kun. You look nice, Naruto said. In that kimono, I mean. It looks nice on you. Hinata blushed and looked away from him for a moment. Thank you, she stutters out. Then she gave him a sideways glance. You look nice to Naruto-kun. Naruto focused in on himself. He was dressed in a gray yukata. He would have liked to have thrown on some orange, but Sarah was against it. Thanks, Naruto said. He saw Sarah giving him a smirk. She mouthed. Told you. Before Naruto could think of anything to say to his caretaker, the group arrived at the council chambers. Now remember, everyone, Hayashi began. Both of you must remain respectful towards the elders. When they ask you a question, you will answer it. Is that understood? Naruto? The Hyuga clan headshot him with a heated look. Naruto folded his arms behind his head. I heard you, Hayashi-san, he said. I won't do anything to raise their collective blood pressure. Or try to give them heart attacks. If you do, can you make sure they actually croak from it? Kurama said. Those old geezers have been giving me a headache. Hayashi sighed. That will do, he said. Then a smile crept on his face. Before you go in there, I would like to say that I am proud of you. Both of you, he looked between Naruto and Hinata. Hinata, you have grown into a fine young lady, and I am certain that you will grow into a woman that can rival your mother in beauty. Hinata blushed. Thank you, father. Hayashi nodded. I do not care what others in the clan say about you. I believe you are precisely what this clan needs as its heiress, her father continued to say. No matter what happens, I will always be proud of you. He pulled her into a tight hug. After a moment, he pulled away and looked over at Naruto. And you, Naruto? Every day I see more of your father in you. You do? Naruto asked. Hayashi nodded. I do. You are a lot like him, Naruto, the man smiled. You also have a lot of your mother in you as well. Both of your parents would be proud of you. Naruto frowned for a moment. It was nice to know that his parents would be proud of him. But he wanted to know more about them. Namely, his father. He had heard plenty of his mother to know what kind of woman she was. But his father was still a mystery to him. Who was he? Had he been a good man? Did he love Naruto? Naruto wanted to know. I don't suppose you can tell me anything about him? Naruto asked the man. Hinata's dad gave him a sad smile. I'm afraid I cannot, he said. The Sandame's law still forbids me from telling you, Naruto huffed. There were times when Naruto hated that law the old man passed. Hayashi's smile softened. I do want to tell you, Naruto, believe me. But in this matter, I agree with the Sandame. You are not ready to bear the burden of knowing who your father was. I know it's supposed to be for my protection, Naruto said. I've been told my father had a lot of enemies. People who would not hesitate to hurt or kill me just because I'm his son. Hayashi nodded. Yes, and not just outside the village walls, he said. It may not seem like it, but your father had plenty of enemies in the village as well. None of them dared to make a move against him. But his son, his orphaned son. You are a lot more vulnerable. What kind of man was his father to have gained so many enemies? A good man, Kurama said in the back of his mind. I just want to know who he was, Naruto said. One day, you will, Hayashi said. When you are strong enough to protect yourself from his enemies. Naruto tilted his head down. A useless gesture as he wouldn't be looking at anything. He did see Hinata giving him a concerned look. Through another set of eyes, he saw a young boy run into his father's arms. Laughing and smiling, the boy was picked up by his father. Naruto held his hand over his chest, feeling an ache. Naruto, Hayashi said. Naruto's attention returned to the Hyuga compound. I can tell you this. Your father was a good man, and he loved you more than anything else in this world. Naruto smiled. Thanks, he said. Hayashi nodded. Now, then, he said, standing up. I believe we have kept the elders waiting long enough. Remember to listen to what they have to say and remain respectful. Understood? Both children nodded. Good. Then I wish you good luck for today. He slides the doors open. Naruto-kun? Hinata said, before they stepped in. Are you okay? Naruto smiled at the girl. Yeah, I am. Hinata didn't seem to believe him, but she nodded anyways. After the meeting with the elders, the two children were escorted to the academy. Konoha streets, and then I gave them the slip. Hinata listened closely as Naruto animatedly told his story. The whole time she smiled as the blonde-haired boy continued to talk. She, of course, knew the whole story already. Just about everyone in the village did, given that the entire village saw the chase after Naruto painted the Hokage moment. Hinata had to shake her head at the antics of her longtime crush. She loved the stories he told. Sarah, though, looked a little less pleased by the matter than Hinata did. One must wonder about the quality of our shinobi if they can be fooled by something as simple as a tarp over a fence, she said with a shake of her head. You would be surprised by how effective the simple methods are. A new voice entered the conversation. Hinata and Sarah looked over to see Itachi and Sasuke walking up toward them. Though I will still remind my people that not all evasions are performed through jutsus or running away very fast. Itachi continued to say. Sasuke, Naruto said loudly. It's good to see you. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Naruto, you probably saw us before we left the compound. He gave a sideways glance at a pair of eyes in the air. Naruto chuckled. True, he said. But I still wanted to say that. Sasuke stepped beside Naruto. Itachi was right behind him as he fell into a conversation with Sarah. So, what were you talking about? Sasuke asked Naruto. I heard something about a tarp over a fence. Naruto smiled. Oh, nothing. I was just talking about how awesome I was, he said. Sasuke just narrowed his eyes at Naruto. Does this have anything to do with that stunt you pulled yesterday? As an answer, Naruto just smiled. Sasuke shook his head. Figured. Painting the Hokage moment in broad daylight? Naruto, you have to be some kind of insane to pull something like that off. How did you manage to do that without half of the village noticing? Naruto placed his hands on the back of his head. As I said, I'm just that awesome, he said. Right. Sasuke said. Itachi chuckled from behind them. It was rather impressive, Naruto-kun. Your prank speaks highly of your skill as a shinobi. Or lowly of ours, Sarah dryly commented. Itachi ignored the woman. Still, I would like to know how you did it, as well. For the well-being of Konoha. We were fortunate it was you who did it. And not someone else with less than, how we say, good-natured intentions. Naruto had a thoughtful expression on his face. I guess you're right, he said. Alright, I'll tell you. After we graduate. Itachi nodded. Alright then, he said. Perhaps you can tell me during the Uchiha clan's celebration for Sasuke's celebration. That is if you will come. I'll think about it, Naruto said. I know the Hyuga are going to have their own celebration for Hinata and me. Itachi nodded. I understand. Then perhaps whenever it is convenient, he said. Hinata was smiling the whole time as she watched Naruto interact with Itachi. But something was on Hinata's mind that made it hard to focus on the conversation. Something that Sasuke seemed to notice. Hinata, is something the matter? Sasuke? Hinata said, having been torn away from her thoughts. Sasuke was looking at her with a perplexed expression. You looked like you were thinking about something. Care to tell what it is? Hinata bit at the inside of her mouth. Should she tell him what she was thinking? Or should she let the thought stew a little longer before saying anything? It's nothing, she said. She looked over at Naruto, seeing how happy he was. She wanted that to last forever. I just want to know who he was. A small frown tugged at Hinata's lips, but she quickly hid it. It can wait until we're with the others. And when Naruto isn't around, she finished. Sasuke looked surprised for a moment. But nodded his head. It sounds important, he said. Hinata continued to stare at Naruto for a moment longer. It is, at least it was to her. It wasn't long before they arrived at the academy. I wish all three of you the best of luck, Itachi said with a soft smile. I know the three of you will go on to become great shinobi. Sarah nodded. I agree with Itachi, she said. While I have no doubt in my mind that you will pass this test, I still give you my best wishes. Naruto, you might have heard this a lot today. But I want to say it for myself. Naruto, I am proud of you. Naruto smiled up at her. I bet you feel like a mother seeing their kid off, he said. Sarah smiled and shook her head. No, more like a big sister seeing her little brother off, she corrected. I know you will go on to do great things, Naruto. I look forward to not just seeing what kind of shinobi you will become but also what kind of man you will be. Naruto actually blushed and looked away from his caretaker. Thanks, Sarah, he said. I didn't expect to hear that coming from you. Sarah snorted. That's because I do care, she said. I might not always show it. But I do care. Then she looked over at Hinata. The same thing goes for you, too, Hinata-sama. I know you will become a great kunoichi. Please keep an eye on Naruto for me. You know how much of a handful he can be. I'm not that bad, Naruto sputtered out. Hinata giggled. I'll try, she said. Naruto just looked exasperated. Sasuke rolled his eyes and started to walk toward the main building. Come on, guys, the others are waiting. With some final goodbyes, the three friends left their escorts. Academy Irika smiled when he walked into the classroom. The class had shrunk somewhat in the past 5 years, but it still brought a smile to his face at seeing so many youths willing to take up the defense of their village. He briefly wonders how many of them would pass the graduation exam and become Konoha genin. Then he shook his head, shaking the thought off. He had no doubt that all of his students would pass. Walking up to his desk, he took careful note of all his students and what they were doing. For the most part, they were doing what they did every day, talking among themselves and their friends. But there was something in the air that felt different about them. An excitement that wasn't there before. In particular, his eyes set on a certain blonde, blindfolded boy in the classroom. Naruto Uzumaki. He was talking among his friends, a broad smile spread across his face. Irika felt his own smile broaden. The boy was always the center of attention and a highlight in anyone's day. That is, if people were willing to look in his direction. Irika sighed as he placed a stack of papers on his desk. He knew about Naruto's burden. He had been there when the Sandai made his decree that should have protected Naruto. Irika was ashamed to admit it, but he had judged Naruto just as harshly as everyone else in the village did. He had thought that Sandai had finally lost his mind when he allowed the boy to attend the academy. It was something that would always eat away at him. In 5 years, he had gotten to know the boy and realized he had made a mistake in judging the boy so quickly. He was a bright and energetic boy and nothing more. He wasn't like some others who thought the scroll and kunai were the same. But he had kept him at arm's length. Irika looked over at the empty spot next to his desk. Mizuki, if only you had managed to see past that too. Then maybe you wouldn't have. Irika shook his head. What was done now. There was nothing he could do about it now. Naruto's friends were a tightly knitted group. Even more so now after the Kurama kidnapping incident. Enough that Naruto had apparently told his friends about his burden. Irika couldn't be happier for the boy as his friends accepted him. Naruto deserved good friends in his life and found them in this classroom. The scarred Chunin decided to let the children talk among themselves for a little longer before he cleared his throat and got their attention. Alright, class, it's time to begin your graduation exam. I wish all of you the best of luck. Sasuke flipped over the paper and started on the next question of the written exam. Before starting, he had looked over the whole thing to get an idea of what the examiners were evaluating them on. There were 30 questions in total, and all of them required a written response. They covered a wide range of topics and scenarios that a shinobi could encounter on the field. Like what to do during a mission if the team leader is incapacitated or what to do when low on supplies. The majority of the questions asked for a 3 to 5 sentence response. The last 5 questions, though, from what he gathered, required 2 or 3 paragraphs to answer. They seemed to cover more complex problems and asked how each student would tackle them. There are 2 bonus questions as well that could be answered. Both were of a similar nature to the last 5 questions of the exam but seemed to cover scenarios that would not usually be encountered by a genin team. Overall, the written part of the graduation exam was comprehensive and tested students on their knowledge as upcoming shinobi. Sasuke, being one of the top students, breezed through the test with ease, with only the last 5 questions giving him pause to think. During the test, Sasuke looked around the room to see how the others were doing. A few others looked like they were tearing through the exam like he had. Shino and Sakura showed no signs that they were struggling. A certain Nara already had his head on the desk, fast asleep. Sasuke didn't doubt that the lazy boy would get a perfect score. Others, though, looked like they were struggling through the test, like Kiba. No surprise there, the Inuzuka boy never really did well with the academic side of things. This part of the exam would drag his score down, that was for sure. But Sasuke knew he would pull through when they got to the physical parts of the exam. There were 3 students Sasuke was more worried about than the others: Naruto, Hinata, and Yakumo. Naruto was sort of like Kiba in that neither did well when it came to written stuff and having to study. For Naruto, if the subject has nothing to do with history or seals, he has a hard time understanding. The blonde-haired boy wasn't dumb, far from it. Sasuke just knew that Naruto was more of a physical type of person. He had to be active to learn. Naruto would struggle with this part of the test, but Sasuke was confident that he would pull through somehow. After that, he knew the rest of the exam would be a breeze for Naruto. Hinata, he wasn't as worried about. She was an intelligent girl who probably sat with Sasuke in terms of academic skill. She would pull through this with no problem. Most of his concern was focused on Yakumo. She had joined the academy at the start of their last year in the academy. While she showed no problem throughout the year, Sasuke was afraid the written portion would cover subjects that the previous years did. Years she wasn't there for. Sasuke took a breath and told himself that Yakumo would be fine. The Kurama would have covered everything the academy did and more. He knew that clan kids like himself received additional training from their clans that improved their chances of passing. Yakumo would get through this, and everyone would become genin. Sasuke looked up at the ceiling. I wonder if we'll be placed on the same team. Sasuke thought. It would be nice to be on the same as Yakumo, though he briefly wondered who their third teammate would be. It couldn't be Naruto or Hinata, as he thought they would go nicely together on their own team. Maybe someone like Shino or Sakura would work well with them. Sasuke shook his head and looked back down at the test. Those thoughts would be best saved for later. After they had graduated. Hokage Tower, it looks like they're finally getting to the physical portion of the graduation exam, a Jonan commented. The real show is about to begin, another said. The Jonan that had been chosen for this year's new genin had been called together in the Hokage's tower. Most of them were gathered around Hiruzen's desk, watching the genin hopefuls through a crystal ball. Does anyone have thoughts? Hiruzen asked. Not much to say, really, a Jonan said. This is the written part of the exam. That doesn't say much about these kids other than how smart they are. Even so, another cut in. It does give us an idea of what we're working with. Did you see the Nara boy? He finished in, like what? 10? 15 minutes? Smart kid. But lazy as hell. Well, what did you expect from a Nara? Hiruzen shook his head at his Jonan's light-hearted jabs. It was good to see his people having a good time. If only that could last forever. Hiruzen focused on the crystal ball, seeing the future genin running through an obstacle course. This version of the graduation exam was the latest in the recent changes made to the academy. Ever since this year's group started, Hiruzen and several others had successfully pushed for changes in the academy's curriculum, making it harder with each passing year. Covering more topics and requiring students to maintain a certain level of physical condition. The graduation exam was the final culmination of their efforts. A written portion with 30 written responses, an obstacle course covering 3 kilometers of rough terrain, followed by a taijutsu match with a Chunin instructor. Then finally, a ninjutsu portion where they had to demonstrate the 3 academy basics, or some variation of them, followed by 2 other jutsus of their choosing. Hiruzen had always wanted to rework the academy. Make it better, so its students would graduate with all the tools and skills they needed to become successful shinobi in life. If only the changes had not been brought about by current circumstances. Hiruzen allowed his Jonin to speak among themselves for a few minutes longer before he spoke his piece. I believe we have a good crop of students this year. We may even see the whole class graduate. That got some mutters from the assembled Jonin. Of that, I have no doubt, Shursui said. With the changes in the academy we can actually expect some good shinobi to come out. Then followed by a steady stream of them each year. Of course, they will still have to pass the true genin test, Kurenai said. How many teams do you think can pass it this time? Shursui shrugged. Who knows, he said. On average, we can expect about a third of them to pass. The rest will be sent back to the academy for additional training. For all we know, all of them may pass, or all of them may be sent back. Speaking of teams, Hiruzen said. Assuming the whole class passes, how should we organize the teams? Some brief whispers passed between the Jonan in the room. Assume stepped. Hokage-sama, the junior Sarutobi said. I would like to have Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akimichi, and Shikamaru Nara for my team. So, you want this year's Ino Shikacho trio, huh? Kurenai said. Not a bad team. I assume this will be a capture and interrogation team, Hiruzen said. Correct? His son nodded at him. Yes, Hokage-sama. I know it may be lazy to work with an already well-established team dynamic. But I think I might be able to do something different with it. If I can't have the whole team, at the very least, I would like to have the Nara boy, Assume offered. He's a brilliant kid, even by Nara's standards. I think I can work with that. Hiruzen nodded. If no one has objections to it, I will consider it. Thank you, Hokage-sama, Assume said with a bow. Kurenai was the next to step up. Hokage-sama. I request that Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburame be placed under my team. I plan this to be a tracker team. I am willing to swap out either Kiba or Shino for Naruto Uzumaki. His unique ability would also be suitable for the role of a tracker. Hiruzen thought about it for a moment. It was solid team composition, and Kurenai was being flexible with her choices. I will consider it, Hiruzen said. Before Kurenai could speak, a white-haired man wearing a mask stepped forward. Actually, Hokage-sama, I would like to the Hyuga girl, along with Kiba Inuzuka and Naruto Uzumaki, Kakashi said. I envision them as a heavy assault team. Kurenai glared at the one-eyed Jonan. A heavy assault team? Kakashi nodded. Yes, he said lazily. Most of our missions should be around seeking out and destroying our objective. Get in, hit them hard and fast, then get out. All three have some tracking ability, so we can easily pursue our objects. Kiba and Hinata can function as the close-range fighters, with Naruto hanging in the back with his ninjutsu. Hinata can also function as the team's medic, given her affinity for the healing arts. Hiruzen gingerly stroked his beard. You both have compelling arguments, he said. I will think more on it and let the both of you know later. For now, let us hear what the others over to say. By the time the Genin hopefuls had neared the end of the obstacle course, several Jonin had made their petitions for teams. All except for one. Shursui Uchiha, who had a wide grin on throughout the whole meeting. Shursui-san, Hiruzen addressed the young man. Care to share your thoughts? You haven't made any requests for your team. Hiruzen lit his pipe and took a smoke. Shursui's grin grew. Somehow Hiruzen knew the Uchiha had something planned. Hokage-sama, I have an idea. The academy, and that is the end of the obstacle course, Irika said. Great timing, everyone. Hinata nodded, glad she had gotten through this. For her, the obstacle was the hardest part of the exam. She didn't have the stamina and speed that some of the other students had. Like Sasuke and Kiba, who were the first to finish, with Sasuke edging out over the Inuzuka boy with his better speed. Naruto had come in close behind Kiba. Hinata did well too, securing a spot in her class's top quarter. For obvious reasons, Shikamaru was the last to finish the course. Now they were moving on to the part of the exam Hinata knew she would excel at. The taijutsu portion of the exam. Each student would be pitted against a Chunin instructor and would be expected to last a minimum of 5 minutes. To save time, 5 matches would be held at once. Hinata sat on the sidelines, watching the matches, and waiting for her name to be called on. The first of her friends to be called on were Shino and Choji. 5 minutes later, they both got solid passes, both boys' taijutsu forms were good, and they proved to be difficult opponents to ring out. As the other matches played out, Hinata turned her attention over to Naruto. So far, her crush had been doing well on the exam. The written portion would not be his best work, but Hinata had worked with him on enough nights to know that he would pass. She was also thankful that Irika was the one to protect her the test. The obstacle course was no worry to her either. He was the third to finish. There was no way he could have failed that part. But now came the part she was worried about. The taijutsu portion of the test followed by a ninjutsu demonstration. There was no telling who Naruto would be pitted against or who would be overseeing the ninjutsu portion. She knew about the Kyuubi. Naruto had told her and the others about him. It explained so much to her. Why the villagers? She wouldn't say they hated him, but they did want to keep him at arm's length. Why there were so many hushed whispers whenever he was around. And why some of the academy teachers seemed to treat him harshly. She understood why they were doing this. But it still made her blood boil, knowing they couldn't see past the Kyuubi and look at the boy himself. Her only hope was that Naruto would be pitted against someone who could keep their prejudices in check. Her name was called. It really wasn't much of a match for Hinata. She came from a clan that specialized in taijutsu, and in this match, she was allowed to use her Byakugan, allowing her to make full use of the Juken. She lasted the full 5 minutes, even closing off all chakra points in one of her opponent's arms. She would get full marks. The other matches went by in a breeze. Kiba dominated his opponent in his match, and Sakura held her own long enough to get solid marks. Shikamaru did the bare minimum to pass. Then came the match she was waiting for. Sasuke, Yakumo, Ino, and Naruto were called up for their examination. Her focus remained on Naruto and his opponent, a woman in her mid-30s. Hinata felt relieved as she recognized the woman. She was one of the teachers that didn't seem to hold anything against Naruto. The match began. Both opponents circle around each other. It was clear the Chunin instructor was waiting for Naruto to make the first move. When it didn't come, the Chunin gave an approving smile. She would be the first to attack. The Chunin charged at Naruto, and threw out a quick palm strike, quickly followed by a second. Naruto blocked the first and parried the second, all with the same arm. To Hinata, it became clear that kunoichi's style revolved around quick and precise attacks against her opponent. If she had guessed, it was supposed to take out the enemy as quickly and efficiently as possible. Unfortunately, her opponent was Uzumaki Naruto. His taijutsu style could best be described as a brick wall that could hit back. It relied on simple blocking or parrying an opponent's attacks. In some cases, allowing a hit to come in and enduring the blow. Endurance was key to Naruto's style, and he had that in spades. Naruto would last the full 5 minutes. Naruto breathed in, trying to ebb the nervous energy building up in him. The moment he had been waiting for was fast approaching. Sasuke Uchiha, a voice said. Naruto nodded at his best friend. Good luck in there, he said. Sasuke smiled and nodded back. You too, Naruto, then he left. Naruto took another breath. They were finally on the ninjutsu portion of the test and the last part of the examination. Everything else had gone well for him so far. Just relax, Kit, Kurama said. You can do this. Just keep calm and focus on the goal. Even if you don't get the bunshin down, the rest of your jutsu should impress them enough to get you a pass. Naruto nodded, knowing his tenant was right. I know, Kurama. I'm just worried about who will be behind those doors, he said to the fox. You don't think your Gigi wouldn't have thought of that? Kurama points out. Something tells me these people are hand-picked by him. Naruto figured as much too. It still didn't stop some anxiety from eating at the boy. Why don't you just have your eyes fly in and see who will be overseeing your exam? Kurama asked. Naruto smiled and shook his head. Nah, I want this to be a surprise, he said. Speaking of surprises. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto took a breath and stepped in through the door. The first thing he did entering the room was spread his eyes out. He sent a pair to every corner of the room and a pair over to each of the 3 examiners. He kept a pair on the doors and windows as well, on both sides. Naruto wasn't risking interference. That done, he looked at the who would be examining his ninjutsu demonstration. None of them were any of the academy teachers, which was a bit of relief to Naruto. 2 of them he didn't recognize, just some dull-looking chunin. The other one though, he did very much recognize. Nara Shikaku, Shikamaru's dad. Naruto was pleasantly surprised by that. Gigi, isn't it a little overkill to have the Jonan commander here? Also, how did you convince the second laziest person in this village to do this? Naruto stops in front of the 3 examiners' table. Uzumaki Naruto, Shikaku began. You will now demonstrate your knowledge of ninjutsu by showing as the henge, the kawarimi, and the bunshin. Followed by 2 jutsus of your choice. Understood? Hi, Naruto said with a quick bow. Can I ask one question? Make it quick, the Nara clan head said. For the bunshin, do I have to do the academy version? Or can I do another version? Naruto asked. Shikaku looked between the others as they held a silent conversation. You may demonstrate any variation of the Academy 3, he said. So as long you show a solid understanding of what they do, we will allow it. Naruto smiled. Hi. Then he went into his test. Henge. A puff of smoke enveloped Naruto. A moment later, the Hokage stood in the room. You know what? I'm getting too old for this job, he said, pulling his trusty pipe out. I think I'll hand the hat off to Naruto, he's a super awesome guy. Shikaku rolled his eyes and stepped out from the table. Very funny, he said. He examined Naruto's henge closely. He gave a nod of approval. A perfect henge. Well done. Naruto dropped the henge smiling. Next, he did the kawarimi. With a simple set of hand signs, he switched places with a log on the other side of the room. Then switched again, bringing him back to the examiners. All done within 3 seconds. The examiners nodded, impressed by the display. Impressive, one of them said. Then came the jutsu that had him worried, the bushin. He had always struggled with the academy version of the jutsu for one simple jutsu. He had too much chakra and not enough control. He would often just overload the jutsu and end up with a pathetic-looking clone. Contrary to what most believe, this wasn't due to him being a Jinchuriki. Though that didn't help him. The main reason was owed to the fact he was an Uzumaki. The Uzumaki were known to have massive chakra reserves, even at young ages. Because of this, while he had massive reserves of chakra, his chakra control was shot to hell. He was working on that, but it would take him a long time to get it down to where he could make a basic clone. That is the academy version. The version he had in mind today did not require as much control. Naruto made a cross-shaped hand sign and channeled his chakra. For a second, he was treated to the sight of all 3 examiners' eyes widening. Is that? Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. In a plume of smoke, 5 clones of Naruto appeared. The examiners looked at Naruto and his clones in shock. Naruto quickly committed the image to memory. He would have to show his friends what they looked like later. Especially Shikamaru. Shikaku stood up and walked up to one of the clones. You're solid? He asked the clone holding his hand out. Yes, sir, the clone said, taking the Nara patriarch's hand and shaking it. Shikaku nodded and returned to the table. He was the only one who didn't have a stunned expression. A genin that can do the Kagebushin, one examiner said. And make 5 of them no less, the other said. And he doesn't even look winded. Naruto smiled. He was able to make a lot more than 5 clones. Way more. But he wasn't going to give them that tidbit of info. Naruto, Shikaku said. Where exactly did you learn that jutsu? Naruto smiled. I learned it from a friend, he said. That friend being Itachi when he noticed that Naruto had trouble with the academy version of the Bunshin. A friend? Shikaku repeated. He got no reply from Naruto. Troublesome blonde. Now that you have demonstrated the academy basics or some variation of them, you may now show us 2 other jutsus that you know. Naruto nodded, mentally relaxing now. The rest of the ninjutsu demonstration went by smoothly. Moments later, Naruto walked out of the examination room, smiling ear to ear. His friends were waiting outside for him. So, how did it go? Kiba asked. Did they let you use another version of the Bunshin? Hinata asked, a note of worry slipping into her voice. Naruto's smile grew, if that was even possible. It went great, he responded. And yes, they let me use the Kage Bunshin. His friends all visibly relaxed. I was a little worried that one or more of the examiners would try something, Sasuke said. But then I saw that one of them was Shikamaru's dad. I knew he wouldn't let anything happen. Naruto nodded. He worried about the same thing until he saw the Nara clan head. Speaking of, Naruto turned to look at the younger Nara. Why didn't you tell us that your dad would be one of the proctors? Shikamaru lazy shrugged. He didn't tell me, he said. He got several eye rolls for his response. It's good to know that no one tried to pull anything with you, Naruto, Sasuke said. We know how some people treat you because of your burden. The rest of Naruto's friends nodded, showing their support. I still find it bullshit that they're still so afraid of you, Kiba said. They should be worshipping the ground you walk. While I wouldn't go as far as to say that, Shino said. You do keep everyone in the village safe by containing your tenant. It is illogical to assume you are what you contain. That would be like saying that all Aburame are bugs simply because we allow our Kikai to inhabit our bodies. To punctuate this, the group heard an angry buzzing noise from the normally quiet boy. So, what jutsu did you use? Sakura said. We were just talking about what jutsus we used after doing the Academy 3, she explained. Nothing too special, Naruto said. Just the wind bullet and the water whip, the others nodded. What about you guys? Sasuke smirked. I bet you won't be able to guess mine. Naruto returned the smirk. Let me guess something fire-related. Like, say, the Great Fireball, he responded. Sasuke held his gaze. That and the Phoenix Bullet, he said. Uchihas, Kurama comments dryly. Pyromaniacs, all of them. I'm surprised that Madara didn't go with Nibi. Naruto ignored the giant fox in his gut. So, what about Hinata? Hinata blushed. I did the water point needle and the mystic palm, she explained. The mystic palm? Naruto questioned. How were you able to show that? Did one of the proctors cut themselves? Hinata shook her head. No, they brought in a test fish. I was able to heal it and get back into the water. That's pretty cool, Naruto said. The others went through what they did until the last of their group Ino joined in. Not long after, they were ushered into their classroom, where they had to wait for the results. Everyone was holding their breath when Irika walked into the classroom holding a sheet of paper. Their teacher for 5 years smiled up at them. Before I give out the test results for everyone, I would like to say something, he began. You are some of the best students I have taught. For 5 years, I have watched you grow. I have watched you turn from mere children to our future shinobi. I have seen friendships that were non-existent blossom into bonds stronger than anything. Some of you have even gone through trials that put those bonds to the test and have come out stronger than ever. It has been an honor and pleasure to teach each and every one of you. I know all of you will go on to have bright futures. He held his gaze on Naruto for a second. And some of you may even go beyond my expectations. I thank you all for being such wonderful students. He bowed to the class. Now then, for everyone's test scores. Following their sensei's speech, everyone was now fully engaged. For most, the next few moments would determine their fate. Now remember, everyone, you have to score over 50 points to pass the graduation exam, Irika said. Aburame Shino, 68 points. Pass. Shino nodded. Akimichi Choji, 67 points. Pass. Choji let a sigh of relief as Shikamaru puts a hand on his shoulder. More students' names were called out alongside their scores. So far, all of them passing. Congratulations were being thrown out everywhere. Sakura Haruno, 79. Pass. Sakura pumped her fist in the air. Next to her, Ino smiled at her. Good job, forehead. Can it, Inapig, Sakura said back with a smirk. Irika continued to list out the test results. Hinata Hyuga, 81 points. Pass. Naruto put a hand on Hinata's shoulder, causing the girl to stiffen up and blush. You did great, Hinata-chan, he said. Hinata nodded at the boy. Thank Naruto-kun, she said. Irika called a few more names before he got to another of their friends, Kiba. Inazuka Kiba, 57. Pass. Kiba smiled and looked over at everyone else. Looks, I pass, guys, he said. Sasuke smirked at the Inazuka boy. Barely, though, he comments. So far, you got the lowest score in the class. Looks like you'll be the dead last. Kiba's smirk turned into a frown. He would have punched the arrogant Uchiha in the face if it were not for Irika. He loudly announced the next student's score. Kurama Yakumo, 64. Pass. Now it was Sasuke's turn to congratulate someone. He looked over at the brown-haired girl and smiled. I knew you could do it, Yakumo, he said. The newest addition to the class smiled back at him. It's all thanks to you, Sasuke, she said. A couple more names were given. Naruto didn't really bother to pay attention to see if they passed or not. He was waiting with increased anticipation for his name to be called out. It didn't help knowing his name would be one of the last to be called out. Nara Shikamaru, 61. Pass. Shikamaru only had one thing to say. Troublesome, then he laid his head on the desk. Irika continued on with the rest of the class. Until finally, he got to the name that everyone else was waiting for. Uchiha Sasuke, 87. Pass. This was then followed by several squeals from most of the girls in the class. Both Naruto and Kiba whimper a little as they cover their ears. Once again, Naruto thanked Kami that Hinata wasn't a Sasuke fangirl. He didn't know what he would do if she was. Naruto felt an odd tug in his heart. The blindfolded boy frowned. That was weird. He almost missed his name. Uzumaki Naruto. At that moment, the world seemingly froze for the boy. The time had finally come. The next thing that his sensei would say would determine if he took his first steps toward becoming Hokage or if they died here. He knew he did well on the exam. He did everything he needed to pass all 4 parts of the exam. But there was always that chance someone would try to tamper with his score. But Naruto made one decision. Even if that did happen. Even if he failed here, he would still pursue his dream. He would find a way to become Hokage of the village and protect everyone he cared about. 83. Pass. Naruto damn near jumped out of his seat to proclaim his success. A gentle hand on his shoulder kept him from doing that. He looked over to see that Hinata was smiling at him. For whatever reason, which calmed him, he smiled back at her. Great job, Naruto-kun, she said softly so that only he could hear her. I knew that you could do it. Thanks, Hinata-chan, he replied back at her. The last of their class was called on. And last but not least. Yamanaka Ino, 73. Pass. Ino pumped her fist into the air. Naruto felt relieved all of his friends had passed the graduation exam. They all would become shinobi. With that, I would like to announce this year's Rookie of the Year, the Kunoichi of the Year, and the Dead Last. Naruto and the rest of the class listened closely to what their sensei had to announce. Though most had already predicted what the positions would be. Iruka began. For the Rookie of the Year, Uchiha Sasuke, the fangirls squealed again, causing more pain to Kiba and Naruto's ears. Kunoichi of the Year, Hyuga Hinata, Naruto congratulated the girl with a pat on her back. And for the dead last, Inuzuka Kiba. Kiba groaned and placed his head on the table. Mom's not going to be happy about that, he groaned. Sasuke smirked. Told you. Can it, duck butt, Kiba's muffled voice said. Iruka placed the sheet of paper down on his desk. Again, I am so proud of all of you. I look forward to following your careers as shinobi. Now, remember to return here in 1 month to receive your genin teams. Class dismissed. With that, class filed out of the classroom. Not as students but as genin of Konoha. Uchiha compound grounds. With the graduation exam over, the Uchiha clan threw a celebration for Sasuke and any others who had passed the exam. This would endure the village to the Uchiha, who recently made great strides to regain their trust. It would even encourage the other clans to take turns holding a celebration like this each year. But that was for the future. Right now, the present was moving along. Naruto and his friends were sitting at one of the stalls in the celebration. To be specific, the Ichiraku ramen stand. The Uchiha clan had opened up the celebration to allow non-clan members to set up their own stalls. Ichiraku was one of them to be invited. To Naruto's joy, it was quickly becoming one of the more popular stands. Yes. Finally, people were coming to acknowledge ramen as the food of the gods. Now, if only they would start to respect the color orange more. Ramen addict, Kurama commented. You are differently an Uzumaki. I don't know how the rest of your clan can pack away so much ramen without becoming as heavy as an ox. Don't pretend you don't enjoy it either, Naruto said to the Ninetales. The fox had no comment, so Naruto returned his attention to his friends. Can you guys believe it? He said. We're all genin now. Real shinobi. It is kind of hard to believe, Choji said, finishing a bowl of pork ramen. His 5th bowl as well. Soon, we'll have teams and be off on missions. Troublesome is more like it, Shikamaru said. He was nursing his bowl of miso. It just means we'll have more work to do. I won't have time to laze around or watch the clouds. Hinata and Yakumo giggle at the Nara's comment. Meanwhile, Ino rolled her eyes. Lazy Nara, she said. At this point, that is practically a redundant statement, Sakura said dryly. Both girls were working on their 2nd bowl of low-fat ramen. Troublesome women, Shikamaru commented. Choji continued on with his thoughts. What I'm saying is, do you think we'll still have time to be friends? Will any of us end up on the same team? Sure, we will, Naruto said. He was getting started on his 9th bowl. They can't separate us. We're too awesome together for that. He's right, Kiba added in. We're all going to have our own teams, and we'll be the best genin this village has ever seen. Right, Akamaru? The little dog barks his agreement. Which echoed off the bowl he was licking out. See, even Akamaru agrees. I'll even bet that we'll all make Chunin before the next class graduates. That got a round of light-hearted cheer. While I am skeptical of our ability to rise through the shinobi ranks, Shino began. I am certain that we will all be placed on the same team. It is only logical. Sasuke looked over at Shino, a half bowl of shrimp ramen untouched. Why's that? He asked. Shino elaborated on his statement. For both political and practical reasons. Political and practical reasons? Yakumo said. She placed her chopsticks down by her bowl, a vegetable variation of Ichiraku's ramen. She was frowning. Naruto also had a frown on his face. The practical reasons he could get behind, even if sometimes they got on his nerves. But the political stuff, he could never get behind. Too much cloak and dagger stuff for his liking. This was coming from a kid training to be a shinobi. Indeed, Shino said. In case no one has noticed, with the exception of Naruto and Sakura, all of us here are from prominent clans. Choji, Hinata, Sasuke, and I come from the four noble clans of Konoha. While Ino and Shikamaru come from the Yamanaka and Nara clans, who have had close relations with the Akimichi for generations. And I'm from the Inuzuka, Kiba said. And I from the Kurama, Yakumo said. Our influence might have waned in the last generation. We're still well regarded. Shikamaru put in his two ins. Even with Naruto, he was taken in the Hyuga as a ward and plans to start his clan. He said. And there's his relation to the Uzumaki clan. A moment of silence fell over the group as their thoughts wandered off the now excitant clan. They knew who his mother was, the last survivor of the once feared clan, Uzumaki Kushina. Now that role fell to Naruto. Kiba whistled. Wow, I never really thought about it, he said. In our little group, we have a lot of pull in the village. Sakura is the only one here that's the odd one out. Sakura's face turned red as she looked away. I guess I am, she said quietly. Ino frowned and slammed a fist into Kiba's head. He fell off his stool. What was that for? He asked, clutching his head. You made Sakura-san feel bad, Ino answered. You basically said she was nothing special. Which, as far as I am concerned, is far from the truth. The others nodded, agreeing with Ino. It was a pretty thoughtless thing to say, Naruto said. Kiba groaned as he pulled himself back on his stool. All right, he said. I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry, Sakura. Sakura nodded. It's all right. I forgive. You, her tone of voice suggested that she was still hurt. But he is wrong, Shino said, pushing his glasses up. While she is not from a prominent clan, her mother is a well-regarded merchant and a member of the civilian council. Oh, right, Naruto said. I think I know her. She's one of the few that doesn't hate me. I think. Shino continued on with his explanation. With that in mind, she still fits in with us on political matters. Kiba just rolled his. Okay, I get the picture. We all basically come from nobility here. Political bullshit aside, you also said there are practical reasons for putting us on the same team? Shino pushed his glasses up. I did, he confirmed. It was around this time that Naruto started to tune them out and started up his own conversation with Hinata and Sasuke. Speaking of teams, who do you think we'll end up with? Sasuke shrugged. Not really sure, he said. They could do the Rookie of the Year, Top Kunoichi, and the dead last team like they do most years, he suggested. Naruto thought about it for a moment. That would be you, Hinata, and Kiba. Right? He got a nod from Sasuke. I guess that's not a bad team, he said. You and Hinata have known each other since the beginning of the academy, and Kiba is not a bad guy. Sure, he's an idiot sometimes. I heard that, said Idiot responded. Naruto ignored him. But he's not bad once you get to know him. Plus, he wouldn't try anything with Hinata. Again, Naruto paused in his thoughts, wondering why something like that would be so important. Hinata was shyly poking her fingers together. It would be nice if all three of us were on the same team, she said. Naruto smiled, thinking about that. Hinata, Sasuke, and him all on the same team. That would be great, he gave voice to his thoughts. All three of us together would be awesome. We would kick some serious ass. Hinata giggled, and Sasuke smirked. I hope our sensei can keep up with us, he said. You alone are a handful. All three of us together? Sasuke shook his head. Kami, have mercy on them. Naruto rolled his eyes. Team. Dope. But even if we aren't put on the same, we'll still be friends, he said. I don't care what others may say, we'll always be friends, and we'll always have each other's backs. Nothing was going to change that. Friends to the end, Hinata said. Friends to the end, Sasuke parroted. Naruto nodded and looked back at the others at the stand. The same thing goes for all of you, he said, grabbing their attention. No matter what happens. Even if we're all placed on different teams, we'll always be friends. We'll always have each other's backs. No matter what, we'll always be there to help each other. Nothing will ever change that, he said, pumping his fist into the air. Friends to the end. Everyone else followed suit. Friends to the end. Back in his tower, Hiruzen smiled as he gazed at the scene through his crystal ball. Dark days were coming, but he could see the light shining through. The will of fire burned bright. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.